those kids weren't going to buy them anyway. You know, one kid would buy a record and 8 of them would tape it on a cassette. When the blank tape business started going down, that's when you knew that these kids just didn't like it anymore. I don't think you could sit a kid down with Sgt. Pepper's and expect them to listen to it from beginning to end without them texting or whatever the hell they do, and playing a video game at the same time. At the height of the record industry, there really wasn't any cable TV. There weren't, 8 million TV stations. Growing up, records were like, like a 3D movie today. It was new and hip. Stereo, surround sound. There was 4-channel surround sound records way before there was surround sound, TV and movies. It just didn't sell. People couldn't figure that one out. People forget about what MTV did. MTV, was a boon and a bust also, because, to get your song, if you will, on MTV, there had to be, a pretty good performance or movie or whatever. Well, that cost a lot of money to do. These record companies were spending shit. One of my buddies, who was at Head of Island, was telling me what he was paying for these videos and hoping that MTV would play it. And, I would figure out how much, divide that by the amount of records that I figured they would sell. It was costing them 25, 30 cents a unit for these things. And I used to why don't you put them out and we can sell them?
Not thinking progressively.
Well, it wasn't progressive. There wasn't an easy way to do it. It was, how they duplicated VHS tape?
Yeah.
I swear to God, they still do it this way. They do it anymore. They would have a zillion VHS players, and, they would run it, and then all these players would record it. It wasn't like, stamping a CD or an LP. It was real-time recording. Unbelievable. So, there were no DVDs, if you will. So really, to be frank, there really wasn't a way to sell those economically or technologically at the time. It's generational. Just subtract 20 years. It's all, in the late, all through the 70s, man, records were hot, man. 20 years later, generational, it starts going down. And plus video games and all these other outlets. Russ and I would sit every friggin' day trying to figure out how to get kids back into the stores. Because it's like being a dope dealer. You got to get them young. You got to get them hooked. You don't do that, then it doesn't mean anything. I had street teams before there were even street teams, where we would go out and, to high schools and give stuff out, promos and stuff like that, little tchotchkes. We had to get, we couldn't get the kids in. And because, quite frankly, there was nothing they wanted to buy. It was their parents that would go in and buy an album and give it to them for their birthday. In other words, whatever pocket money kids had wasn't being spent in record stores. And video games, I'm telling you, video games had a big effect because, the biggest buyer of records was always males. And then, when they started sitting around, playing video games, you don't know what's happening until it's happened, really. Because retail stores were always profitable. That's what you have to understand. They were always profitable. But the amount of profit that they spun off had to support the main office and the debt. In my case, there really wasn't any more I could do to get more profit to feed the machine, so to speak. All right? I mean, we couldn't raise prices. You can't cut the profitability. I don't care what anybody says. You can't do that. You can't get rid of all your old-time employees that, have all this knowledge and trade them for, some pimply-faced 17-year-old kid. You can't do that. So in my case, it just got to the point where I was just, I don't know how to say, I was just frustrated. I mean, I did everything at least I thought I could do. I had this meeting with all these VPs that I had, and I said, look, they're sending in another, CEO guy, and, don't you guys worry about it. But, the first one that's going to get canned is probably going to be me. And, just do your best and stay as long as you can. And when that time came, to be honest with you, I was pretty relieved. I was tired of having to downsize people that, worked there for 30 years. I mean, it was just, I didn't want to work for the banks. They were ridiculous. And, sitting around having meetings and meetings and meetings and meetings and meetings wasn't, on how to save money on paper clips or, screw a vendor or something like that was not what I was going to do. So how did I feel? Just sad, I guess. We borrowed, it was $175 million, and it was due, I think, in 2002 or 2000. I forget when it was due. But it was, that was the problem. They wanted their money, investors. Why they want their money is beyond me. But they wanted their money, and I think the decision to trade debt for equity was not a very smart decision. It was a short-sighted decision. And, when you only have so much say, when you trade debt for equity, then, they have a say. It was awful. I mean, it was... Russ, he didn't really leave until they liquidated. First of all, you can't downsize or, quote, restructure without closing stores. Well, you have these little things called leases, and unlike Higgins, who had, a zillion stores, he could go to Westfield Mall and say, look, I've got, stores in 50 of your malls. I'm either going to go bankrupt and close them all, or you're going to let me shut down 4 of my unprofitable stores. We couldn't do that. I remember we had a location in Glasgow that just turned out to be totally unprofitable. We found another one, and the British lease laws are such that you can even go bankrupt, and you're personally liable to pay the rent. We couldn't walk away. We couldn't just shutter them. We'd have to sublet it or something like that, and it's just something you just couldn't do. We could have done all that kind of stuff, but on the other hand, we couldn't because of what it would cost. When I told you about relationships, how our sales guys became sales managers and everybody moved up, well, there was also a consolidation in the distribution and the manufacturing business. And a lot of our, quote, friends, were laid off or not there or whatever, died, stuff like that, that would have fought for us. But a lot of them, they were more interested in selling, Walmart 500,000 Eagle records or 1 million Eagle records, getting the money, and that's that. So we were a hard account. We carried all this catalog. They didn't want to. They were closing their warehouses. The distribution companies, you know, they were hurting too. They were laying off salesmen right and left. They had to cut. They didn't have, you know, we had to have, you know, every classical record available to us. Well, you know, we were the only ones that were buying them. No other account was buying them. In their defense, if you will, they were living in the same world we were living in. They had all these fucking accountants on their back. And, you know, it was easier, I think, for them to have us go away. Because in the short term, they could close all their branches, get rid of all their sales staff, and for that quarter, or whatever, get a bonus. And, you know, Russ didn't work in the stores. And so he didn't quite, I don't think, he liked dealing with, like, the Jim Urys of the world, you know. And so, you know, he didn't quite see how much work we were to the record companies. And also, you know, they hated, you know, when, you know, somebody like a Joan Armatrading, who hasn't had a hit record in years, goes and calls them up saying, hey, Stoner in New York doesn't have any of my old catalog. You know, they hated that kind of shit. Yeah, whatever happened, you know, I used to buy records. I said, well, buddy, when was the last time you bought a record there? I said, well, if you would have kept buying records, it would have been around. You know, and that's the thing. I mean, everybody missed it, but they never bought anything. And the funny thing is, the minute that liquidation thing went up, boy, sales, according to Russ, were through the roof. To this day, I can't understand why anybody cares, because when the company needed the sales and the support, it wasn't there. Sometimes you feel like a TV series that everybody likes, and the minute they say they're canceling it, there's a big outrage. I can't stress enough is that, you know, the media, all roads lead to Russ. And I love him to death, yada, yada, yada. But, you know, it wasn't him. It was every manager, every jazz player, I mean, thousands of people that made the company. It was them. Those are the people that did it. You know, those are the ones that, you know, would, you know, stay till, you know, 3 o'clock in the morning doing inventories. Those are the ones that cared. Those are the ones that would, you know, jump up and down to make sure that we had something in stock. You know, I mean, that was it, you know. It wasn't, you know, the upper management, so to speak. Did you notice that every store was different? You know, if I went into, like, let's say, I don't know, Long Island, we had a couple of suburban stores there. I would, you know, and most stores had, let's say, the reggae kind of in the same position. I'd tell them, look, move it. Whatever you guys move it. You look the same. Remember I told you? Always made assistant managers of other stores. You have to, you know, I would stress on these people, you know, move the rock upstairs and the classics downstairs every year. You move that, keep that store looking fresh. Change. You know, and that I think was part of the success was that, like here in Sacramento, we had 4 stores, but people would always say, well, I like this one better than the other. That was something we were striving for. When I started in 67, it was a little department in a discount store. Now it's a little department in a discount store. But there are so many little independent record stores now that are like one of the kids who used to work for me just opened. He had a little grand opening that I went to last night, and he specializes in LPs and records that he likes. I guess is the only way I can put it. And it's a cute little store, you know. And one of my employees has a store in Colorado that's doing well. So the small independent record stores, you know, that sell used records and you know they put stuff online and all that. They're still going. It's just that not that many people care, you know. Records aren't like the main thing anymore because there's, you know, like I said, there's so much more. I mean, I own this stupid little copy and print store, okay? I've got a Kinko's, I don't know, half a mile away. I don't do much advertising at all because I can't really afford it. But nothing goes out of that place. It is absolutely perfect. Nobody calls without a call back. You know, I mean, it's all customer service. I just hired a kid that worked at the Kinko's that's down the street, and I was amazed that my little store does 3 times the volume that Kinko's does.
Right.
And you know, it always looks busy to me, but it's all, you know, shipping. So if anybody, you know, is going to open up a little store, I mean, it's very, I think this is the time to do it. Retail rents are low. There should be money, small business loans available. Unfortunately, the product has a bad name, but, you know, I think there's still business out there. I think, you know, if you can, you know, survive on, like, you know, doing see, the gross profit's going to be higher. You know, you don't have to give away the hits anymore. Mainly there aren't any. So you don't have to, you know, buy something for $12 and sell it for 10. Plus, you know, Universal sells, I think their records are all like $9 or something like that. So there's, you know, you can make money now. You know, you can sell used records. You can do all kinds of little things now that you couldn't do before. And, you know, and if you're right there, I mean, you can do it. So I think there's, you know, there's going to be a business. It's just not going to be the same. You know, you don't see baseball cards anymore. You know, that whole idea of you know, look, in the old days, if you went over to somebody's house, they had their record collection in their living room or family or whatever it was, and you could look at their record collection and kind of figure out where they're at, you know. But now, you know, what are you going to do? Here's my iPod. So the whole thing's different. You know, you know, they're not trophies. They're not statements. They're not, you know, album cover art isn't anything. I mean, it's all that. All the old rules are not the rules. It'll never be the same. I think it's going to be, the future is niche. But I think, you know, you're going to have a choice between going to Walmart and buying, you know, whatever you want, or going to a niche store if you like nice clothes or nice jewelry or something like that. You know, the country's going rich and poor, and retail is going, you know, the same way. You know, there's shit for the masses, and then there's going to be, you know, the specialty stores for the educated, so to speak. You go back to my arguments and Russ's arguments back in the, I don't know, 80s. Singles. That's all they're fucking doing. It's selling singles. And it's the only place you can get them. You know.
I'll ask a final question, Stan. If you were put
sure.
if you were put in charge of a large company, like could be, let's say, Apple's iTunes, or maybe there was a company that wanted to open up a new chain of record stores, what would you what strategy would you implement to get people back into the stores and to kind of change this attitude of free that is we're trying to get out of in the music field?
Oh,
how do you get?
I would hope. Well, first of all, I'd do the same thing we did in Atlanta. I would fill it up with merchandise that would be in the general public's collection. So it would have credibility. I would have areas where they could download from Apple if the store didn't have it in stock or that's what they wanted to do, but in an atmosphere where you'd have somebody telling you, well, this is to get this, like let's say you wanted some song that there's 8 million versions of, and have enough experts to say that's the better version, and you could probably get it 20 cents off every. I don't know. There's probably some commission there. Memorabilia, books on music, maybe instruments, LPs, and then something happening all the time. A reason to go. Also, I would have a huge video presence. Now's the time to really get into video. The thing is that it would be very expensive to open, and there's who's going to come up with $1 million or I don't know what it would cost on my head to do it, and then to have the patience. Then you're going to have the patience. We always used to say it took 2 summers and 1 Christmas or 2 Christmases and 1 summer for a store to get going. Mm. And in this soundbite, hurry world, it's hard to say if they're going to be patient. We all had fun. And, I had 2 rules. I'll leave you with that. Be honest and have fun. And if you broke any of those rules, you get fired. I mean, that's the whole key right there.